So now that we kind of talked about a little bit of what's required of the producer to get the job, let's talk a little bit more about what drives the producer to work on keeping their job and what stations look for. And that's going to be TV ratings. So what ratings are is they're a metric used to track how many people watch television on a particular channel at a particular time. And they compare that to what other people are watching and what the rest of the world is watching at the same time. So there was a company, and this was the most commonly cited company, called Nielsen, since they've been around since the 1950s, and their results were reported in two types of measurements for television ratings. They were called ratings points and ratings shares. Now, as of 2018, there was an estimated 115.6 million television households in the United States. And these are not individual, these are actually homes that have a television in them. And this was up 1.2% from previous years. So they've started to include other technologies, like televisions can now receive signals from the internet. And people aren't just watching cable boxing over the air, but they're watching other shows that are now streaming. And so Nielsen is going through and they're modifying how they're doing it. But ultimately, the two main factors that they're looking at, or the two main data they're presenting, is the rating points and the shares. And so Nielsen had been the main proprietor of television ratings for the longest time, like I said, since the 50s. And there are now actually newer companies coming out like ComScore, which are trying to compete directly against Nielsen, because Nielsen had been in the business and the king of providing ratings for so long. They didn't really change the way they were presenting information, since they didn't have any major competition. And now other companies are coming in and they're causing an evolution in ratings. So one example is WSFA, a local station to us, quit using Nielsen, and they were getting away from them, and they're starting to get away from Nielsen from other activities of ratings called sweeps. And I'll talk about sweeps and year-long ratings in just a little bit. But you can also kind of see, looking at ComScore, they've got digital media, mobile, web, video, TV, box office, DVD, Blu-rays, movies. So they're channeling the way they do ratings a little bit differently. So what is ratings? A rating point is a single national rating that represents 1% of the total number of the 115,600,000 homes. So if you convert that number just into a 100%, a ratings point represents 1%. So in this case, there was a TV show called Game of Thrones that a lot of people were really invested in watching during like 2015 and 2016 and on. And there was an episode where this particular lady, who was known to drink wine and create a little bit of chaos, drank some wine, did some things, and the story changed completely. And it caused a lot of viewers to start speculating and talking and going on and on about what this person did. But for this one particular episode, they noticed that out of those 115 million households, 7.1 million of them were watching this episode when it aired. So they divided the 7 million by the 115 million households, and this one episode got 16.25 ratings points, which for television is a very good number. So the other side is shares. So when they talked about points, it's just the number of TVs that are watching this channel, this show at this time. They don't care about any other metrics. For a share, they're looking at the number of televisions that are turned on, in use, and watching the program. So as before, they just saw how many people watched it. Now for the share, they're looking at, of all the TVs that are watching not just this program, but all the other programs that are currently being broadcast at the time. They're now comparing how this one's doing to all the others. So for example, Nielsen may report a show is receiving a 9.2 ratings point and a 15 share during the broadcast. That means out of all television equipped households, 9.2% were watching that program. But out of all the televisions that were turned on and currently in operation, 15% of that smaller group of televisions was watching that one particular program. So they can see not just how many people are watching it, but how they compare to others. So, case in point, and I'm going to disappear for a second, there was a television show that came out in the 90s called Roseanne, which centered around a middle-class American family, and it wound up going off the air for a couple of decades. And the producers and the actors and actresses decided to redo the show or to continue it. And so these are all the original actors, except for the two younger kids who were in the original series. And when it came out, for its debut, they had a 5.1 rating, which was about 18.1 million. They had 126 million households in their key demographics, which was 18 to 34-year-olds. And so basically what this kind of translates into was, for a show to be a continuation or a reboot or not a rebroadcast, but for a show to come back, these were probably some of the highest ratings they've ever seen for a show quite like this, as opposed to newer shows that were coming out. Now, when we're talking about ratings there, and especially in Nielsen, there are a few times a year when the ratings company looks specifically at what's being watched, and these periods are known as sweeps. And so one of the things that Nielsen will do is they will hand out paper diaries to people, and they will pay them a small amount, like $1 or $10, to write down a diary of what they were showing and watching on particular days at particular times. Nielsen would also pay these people to plug a small box into their cable provider, and this box would record what channels were being watched at what particular times, in addition to paper diaries. And so during peak times of the year, known as sweeps, Nielsen will pay particular attention to what people are watching, and television stations will save their best material other than breaking news. So they may have feature information and special stories that they're going to put together, and they're going to air them at these specific times. And those times are 4 times a year: February, May, July, and November. Now, of the 4 months, the two biggest are February and November, because at this time, the new programming has had a chance, like new shows that have come out, have had a chance to start running their course and to start gathering viewers. By February, you're already 4 or 5 episodes into a new show. Likewise, in November, you've got the spring lineup and the fall lineup. Now, of those 2 months, there are 2 days that people are going to watch in particular: Monday and Thursday. On Monday, they just got back from the weekend. They want to see what news and information has just been happening while they were away. And then Thursday, while they're getting ready for the weekend, they're going to watch the news to see what's coming up for the weekend so they can prepare. What kind of weather's going to happen? Are there any sporting events that they may be interested in? So of those 4 months in February and November, Mondays and Thursdays are the biggest days that people are going to be watching television, and particularly the news. And because of that, news stations are going to have their most powerful, informative, and influential pieces of news that they're going to save and air at these particular times. So for the February sweeps, stations will get ideas from all over the place. In particular, this one for sweep ideas came in from the networks. The network office were sending out emails to the local stations saying, for sweeps, here's some stories you might want to do. What's the relationship between iPhone apps and February 14th, Valentine's Day here in the States? So how many people are using apps on their phones to find dates, to find a match, to find a relationship, at least for Valentine's Day or February 14th? What are the rights for debt collectors when they come after you? So many people are in debt. If it's credit card debt, mortgage debt, especially college tuition, and if they start defaulting on their loans, they have debt collectors who are going to come to try and collect that money. What are your rights when a debt collector comes to you? At what point do they move from collection into harassment or there are ways you can try to consolidate your debt to help you out. Another story is that more and more teenagers are getting plastic surgery. They're having their eyes fixed, their eyes moved up, their nose tweaked, something like that. They may add dimples. And so a lot of teenagers are now asking their parents for allowance money for surgery. Phone wars. I'm sure most of you guys have a cell phone. Do you have an iPhone? Do you have an Android? Which one is better? It looks like I think the iPhone just came out with a new one a few months back, so Android's going to come out with a new one soon. Which one's better? So we can do a story on that. There's been information coming out that there's some animal shelters that have been treating their animals inhumanely. At the beginning of COVID, there was so many people staying at home that they were now adopting dogs, and so many animal shelters were happy to see that they no longer had any animals in. When COVID ended, people started going back to work, and they started realizing they didn't have time to take care of a full-time pet, so there are people who are now sending the pets back to the animal shelters. Animal shelters are starting to become overcrowded. And so sometimes that could lead to inhumane treatment. So let's do a story talking about what animal shelters are doing. Can driving habits really help you save money at the pump? Well, since COVID is over, we're starting to see an fluctuation of gas prices. So is the way you drive going to help you save money? If you hit the gas really fast going out of an intersection. If you have a pickup truck, do you save money if the back of the gate is up or if it's laid down? Does that change the aerodynamics? Could be a good story. It's been information's come out that there are elderly people who are now selling drugs that they get from their doctors, such as anxiety medicine, cholesterol medicine, blood pressure medicine, that they're now selling it to teenagers and other people just so they can have enough money to pay rent or mortgage or some of their own medical bills. There's also been a report of surgeons who've been falling asleep during the operations. Could be a coincidence that it's tying in with teenage plastic surgery. I don't know. We could do a story to see what's going on with that. And so these are information and interest pieces that we can wait and put together for release during the specific sweep times. And so that's just kind of a look at how TV stations measure how people are watching. And as a producer, if you have your ratings for your show are constantly low and there are other shows in competing markets that are doing better, then a station may wind up letting you go to hire a new producer who can get the audience back and keep the retention of people watching. So by using ratings, stations are able to measure how well successful or unsuccessful they are at producing contents for people to see. And so when we next meet, I'll talk to you about some sources and ideas that producers can